Welcome to the Hangin Banners podcast with your host, Tyler Witt.
How about this block here by Tyler Witt? You're going to see him get out in front, and he's going to get a key block that springs this play.
Jack Coachman.
And here he is, having the time of his life.
And Ryan Sartori.
He may be short, but he's thick.
That's thick with two C's.
It's episode 6. You're back. We're back. Ryan Sartori. That's Tyler Witt. That's Jack Coachman. We're ready to roll after another exciting week of NFL football. We've got MLB's divisional round mostly behind us. We're recording this on Monday when the Guardians and Yankees are set for a decisive Game 5. I have to emphasize Guardians because for whatever reason, Bob Costas finds it so necessary to say Indians the entire broadcast.
It's not like that guy gets paid to know at minimum the names of the 30 teams who he's going to watch play.
We'll get into Bob Costas a little bit more. I've got a bone to pick with the Hall of Fame broadcaster himself. But gentlemen, good to have you back. Recording before Monday Night Football yet, so we have not yet gouged our eyes out after watching the Denver Broncos Russell Wilson led team.
Yeah, we'll see how nobody necessarily needs to know how we're all feeling afterwards, but that might come up later in the show as well.
It very well might.
Yeah, there we go.
A lot of tension among Russell Wilson going around this time of year. So
100%. Now, Tyler, I know that you had your opportunity this past week, and I just feel like we need to get kind of caught up with it. You don't have to go into great detail, but just tell us what it was like to be on a professional sideline.
it was very cool. Just kind of taking everything in, running out of the tunnel. It's a little different than college. Just because you kind of work your whole life to get to a place like this. So it was very exciting, very nerve-wracking for the first time, I would say. But it was I had a good time, good experience.
Well, I've got kind of a wild, out of left field question. Tyler, where are you originally from?
I am from Joliet, Illinois.
All right, I could be just in the prisoner of the moment. We're talking, he's got the Winnipeg hat on. We're talking about his football. Sartori, am I wrong? Does he sound a little bit more Canadian now?
I'm hearing a little uptick.
Is so northern Minnesota, northern Wisconsin, Canada. I was like, wait a second, Tyler, you one game in, you're Canadian now.
It's so funny. I was walking out of the locker room today after watching film and doing our rundown, and some of the American guys stopped and said, "You look awfully Canadian today." I had this hoodie, a pair of sweatpants, I had a pair of boots on, and I had my trapper hat. So it was the winter hat with this flaps.
Yep.
It's my favorite hat of all time. But he's like, "Man, you look more Canadian than ever today." So
we lost
the
him.
Transition. Yeah, I know the transition is happening. He's slowly turning more and more polite. He's enjoying poutine fries more and more every time that he indulges. But yeah, Tyler, you gotta keep that in check, man. You gotta keep it in check. I know you want to stay up there in Canada, but remember your roots. Long A's and O's, okay?
For sure.
All right. Before we jump into the show head first, let me also remind you that you can find the podcast on Instagram and Twitter at Hangin Banners. You see that scrolling along the bottom of your screen. You can also follow the podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. If you follow us on Instagram, you will also be able to subscribe to notifications for when Jack and I go live with the Sunday show that we do at 10:30 Central Time every Sunday, running down fantasy advice, and we also do some pick'em lines as well. With that, gentlemen, let's jump right into the show. It's Count Your Wins. Jack Coachman, I'd like you to lead us.
Yeah, so I think it gets lost sometimes, especially me of all people. My entire football fanhood since I was, preteen, kid, whatever. Almost all of it has also included fantasy football and sports betting and other things going on to keep the game even more interesting, picking the games, things like that.
Preteen Jack Coachman with the betting. I love it.
Look, man, this is statute of limitations. Whatever I did then, it's okay now, right?
The league is opening an investigation into Jack Coachman.
But I had the pleasure yesterday of looking at what continues to be a horribly balanced NFL schedule, and they'll put 12 games on at noon, and then you have like 2 at 3 o'clock. Obviously, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but the 3 o'clock window, at least 3 o'clock Central Time, rolled around, and it was Seahawks Cardinals, it was Panthers Rams, which I really wasn't interested in, and it was Bills Chiefs, which is, if you go into the season and you asked me what game would you like to see most, that didn't involve the Saints, of course, Bills Chiefs has got to be up there based on where we left off last year in the playoffs. The whole Allen Mahomes developed rivalry where they don't really dislike each other, that as far as we know, but these teams just have followed a similar trajectory. And for the first time in a long time, I felt the need to turn off Red Zone. And I think it's tough for an NFL game because of how whip quick coverage is, and you'll get your alerts from your different apps, and Twitter people are talking about everything as it happens. It's tough to keep up with everything all at once if you're not on Red Zone. So deciding, you know what, there's only 2 other games on. I don't really want to watch them. I switched to Bills Chiefs, which was an awesome game. It was close the whole time. You had this feeling that something big was going to happen at some point, and it did pay off a couple times. I'm going to say that was my win this week. Bills Chiefs brought me back to enjoying one football game during the red zone hours.
Well, right, and it's the fact of enjoying one football game during the red zone hours, right? Because you can watch the Saints, I can watch the Bears and not necessarily enjoy my time whatsoever, but to singularly sit down and watch Bills Chiefs, I think was a ton of fun. I think in terms of competition and comprehensive, just overall knowledgeable football being played, that was probably through 6 weeks of football the single best game we've seen played, and was very, very fun to watch. I think the best play of the game, I called Josh Allen a goon for this, is when he's rushing for a first down and decides as a quarterback, not just any quarterback, but a top 5, top 3 quarterback in the NFL, decides to hurdle a defender, putting his body on the line in ways that NFL executives, head coaches, offensive coordinators everywhere look at and say, oh no. And then when it's, converted and looks flashy and cool, everybody goes, oh, okay, yeah, that was pretty cool. But like, that was probably the coolest play of the game, was Josh Allen going goon mode.
Yeah, and it's the Chiefs. Something about seeing the Chiefs. He did that last year too. He hurdled over a Chiefs guy. So I don't know what it is about that matchup, but it gets everyone fired up because they know that they're really, if you ask me right now, like, oh, who's the top tier of NFL teams? It's Bills, Chiefs, and then it's a gap before the next team. So it was cool to see that game. And obviously, I'm going to go right back to Red Zone next week. And I do really like the Red Zone format, but every now and then you get that super rare game, and the other games are not interesting. And you're like, I'm just going to sit and watch this football game like they used to do in the pioneering days, in the pilgrim days.
The Octobox, though, is like that meme of the Pope when he's like holding up a thing. I love watching like the Octobox at the very beginning. Tyler, as an offensive lineman, we've asked a similar style question to this on the show already, but like, when you look at quarterbacks like Mahomes and Allen, who are phenomenal in the pocket and doing what they do as traditional pass throwers, but they're also really good at getting out of the pocket. Have you played with anybody like that? And if so, like, what's it like as a lineman to watch a play develop where you're watching your quarterback run around and possibly hurdle somebody?
I wouldn't say I've had a guy really like that I've played closely with, but I think a good example of it is on the Winnipeg Blue Bombers quarterback, Zach Collaros. He's basically like Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady of the CFL. He is insane. And the way he can sit in the pocket and he can gash you downfield, but he can also roll out, and he's arguably more dangerous when he's out of the pocket running around. But when that happens, it makes your job as a offensive lineman that much easier, because you can protect them, but should something happen, your quarterback has the ability to get away, make plays, extend plays downfield, and I mean, it just makes for more explosive offense. One less thing you really have to worry about. If you have his back all this time, the one time you may need him to have your back, he's got you.
Now, does that make it, having a guy who can throw from the pocket but also can extend plays like the quarterbacks we've mentioned, is that easier to block for than, say, a Lamar, Justin Fields, Jalen Hurts, where they're almost conditioned to run first?
I think if you get a quarterback that's more of a run first, it's kind of harder. I think running as like a last resort is a little bit different. Quarterbacks like Lamar or like Lamar rolling out like right away. You think that you're okay in pass protection, but then he sees a hole that you don't see because you're face to face with a defensive lineman.
Sure.
So it kind of gets difficult in that aspect where you don't really know what he sees. So you might end up blocking your guy into him. Like it could be a big play, but like you said, you don't have eyes in the back of your head, so you can't really see.
It's interesting. I love just, talking football with you, right? And hearing from an X's and O's standpoint, what it looks like for the guys who make plays happen like yourself. So that's always fun. Tyler, I'll ask you to continue on your rant here, so to speak, with your win of the week.
So just kind of along the same lines was my trip to BC. We played the BC Lions, which is in Vancouver, Canada. So my first time really outside of Winnipeg in Canada. And it was absolutely stunning. It was just beautiful. We walked down to the Bay area with all they have like the seaplanes that fly in and fly out. And it's like the perfect combination of like an urban area and nature. And it's insane. There were so many beautiful green spaces. There were, beautiful buildings, beautiful architecture in the city. It was a very clean city. It was just very beautiful, picturesque walking around. Just
He is becoming more and more Canadian, isn't he?
Doesn't matter if it's in the middle of the country or all the way on the west coast by the Pacific. No, I've heard Vancouver is really cool. I think that's it's like the biggest city for a wide stretch as you go east in Canada, right? Like there's not much in between that and sort of that central time zone, if I recall correct.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much just
Like
Vancouver
the Prairie
out there.
States or something, right?
I think it might be. I don't know my geography for Canada very well, but what I do think it's Vancouver over by Seattle, then maybe Calgary in
Calgary's
between the
north.
two.
No,
Calgary's
Way
north.
north. Okay.
no, it's like what do you got? You've got British Columbia, and then you've got I'm trying to remember. It's like Saskatchewan is somewhere in there.
It's Saskatchewan's close to
Newfoundland?
us.
There's one other one between. I don't know. The problem on Risk is that they just divide it into like the 3 or 4 things. That doesn't help us too much. But no, I've heard Vancouver is a really cool place, and that Pacific Northwest area in the U.S. kind of includes that section. But I don't hear too many U.S. cities referred to as great green spaces and very clean. So that's one perk.
Yeah.
It sounds like a massive juxtaposition.
I mean, I'm biased because I think Chicago is like one of the most beautiful cities.
It is.
And it is. But I think the way that because it's different. It's not Chicago, but in its own way, it's like it's beautiful. And the way they were able to combine that, and man, I also had a lot of great food, so that was also a huge plus. A lot of
Shout out to the steak.
great sushi. We went to a great restaurant for dinner. We went to like a chop house, so it was fantastic.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I mean, and that's one of the perks of being in professional sports, right? Is being able to travel, seeing new places, stuff like that. That's certainly one of the reasons that I'm sort of lured into the field that I'm in, and that's awesome. Being able to see some great green spaces. I'll count my win this week for Saturday. Just Saturday in general in the world of sports was a phenomenal day. I started my day off by calling a football game. And then I was treated on the way home to the finale of Phillies Braves. I listened to that on the radio. Always cool to hear the local guys call those games and big moments. The Phillies going to the NLCS for the first time since 2009, which is awesome. But just listening to those broadcasters, hearing how nervous they were, hearing the actual sound of joy in their voice when they were saying like the Phillies have won, they're going to the NLCS, like that's always cool for me, and it's a cool way for me to learn about what I do. And then I get home, I'm able to catch the end of Alabama Tennessee, which was incredible. A great game. Jack, I know you don't like college football, but even you can admit that was a fun game to watch.
Yeah, I unfortunately didn't get to see most of what happened. I had decided, oh, I'm going to go for a walk. It's a nice
Oh,
fall weather day, and I had gotten back from the walk and just saw what had happened in the last like 90 seconds of that game. So I missed the conclusion, but no, that was supposed to be a pretty classic one. And spoiler alert, if you didn't hear, Alabama lost, and that always makes me smile a bit.
Alabama loses, America wins. That's
Hmm.
typically the motto there. Then we get caught in the Astros Mariners marathon and the 18 innings that was in order to decide who would win that game. On top of that, the Guardians walk it off. The Padres have a 5-run seventh inning to take the Dodgers out of the playoffs. All of this, and I went 2 for 4 in my parlays on Saturday as well. Is in all, it was a great, great day for sports. And it's one of those ones where, like, even if you sat on the couch all day to watch sports, you feel pretty fulfilled with your decision making to have just sat there and consumed all of that greatness.
Yeah, it's live cultural moments, right? It's so hard to capture those unless it's some major award show or gala with a bunch of like celebrities and A-listers. It's hard to be personally involved in some momentous occasion, but when you get a run of sports occurrences like that, they're like, "Oh, this is a lot of people's history or their brief recent history happening on one day and I got to watch it all happen."
Well, and even like people will shrug off like Alabama, Tennessee. Maybe people don't watch it as closely. This is one of the biggest matchups of the year every year. And Tennessee had not won in 15 years or something like that. And they are playing at home. And of course, the fans are going to be absolutely raucous. And it was bedlam there, especially after they won. RIP to the field goal posts. They now rest graciously in the river in Knoxville. Like that, it was just all in all a great day. And one of the other things that I'll say about like these momentous occasions is that when you are watching them and also keeping up with them on Twitter, that to me is a great experience as well. Even though, like, I'm encapsulated in just my living room, I'm still like living this moment with so many other people on Twitter. And like, while I'm not a huge social media guy per se, I love being a part of that on Twitter. It's one of those unique experiences as a sports fan.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of people, at least my generation, friends my age, who are like, "Oh, there's a big baseball game on," or "Oh, there's a big football game on. Let's go to whatever sports bar we can find, and they'll have it on TV." Like, no, this is our sports bar. This is our water cooler. This is how
Yeah.
you say, "Oh, look what happened." It's like, I know, dude. I saw that too.
Yeah, it's always great. Anyway, let's move on. Intercepted at the goal line. Let's break up this sports talk just a bit. And Tyler, tell me how cold it is in Canada.
Yeah, so for the very first time in my career as an athlete, I practiced in basically a blizzard. It was insane. Kind of came out of nowhere. I was hearing rumblings it was going to snow this weekend, but it didn't. It snowed like our first day of practice. So we were out there, and it was very funny from one angle of our film, like the sideline view. It was, it looked fine, looked like a normal day. And then you get the end zone copy, and it's just coming down, just sideways. You could barely see. Yeah, very, very cold. And it just stayed cold. So now it's no longer warm. It's very 40 degrees below and lower.
You skipped fall.
Yeah, it was just such a quick transition.
And also, I would like to point out that I feel like we're saying that more and more, that we just skipped fall. Maybe it's just an illusion. Maybe it's just our geographical standing in the world, but like we skip fall all of the time. And I'm starting to believe that fall is just this fictitious idea that we have built up in our heads of crisp weather and warm drinks, and like crisp enough to be bearable and go outside and still do things in sweatshirts. It snowed today at O'Hare Airport. This morning, it snowed. It has been kind of crisp for like 2 weeks. And if you want to call 2 weeks a season of the year, fine. But fall at this point is just a fallacy.
I don't know. I'm glad you mentioned there was a word that you used there that I wanted us to talk about, but I didn't have an organic place to put it. Crisp weather, right? Like when I went for a walk on Saturday, I'm like, oh, it's kind of a nice crisp fall day. if you were to say that to someone who hasn't heard the word crisp used in relation to weather, it's impossible to say what that means. What makes weather crisp? I'm walking, I'm like, oh, all it is like, it's a bit chilly. Like, it was in the mid 50s, it was sunny for a bit and then kind of gray. And I'm like, oh, it's a nice crisp fall day. No, it's just colder than it used to be. There's nothing special about it. But also, it's the exact right word to describe it. And I think that's why people get lost, is because you have these notions of, oh, this is what fall is, right? It's like, oh, they start rolling out the seasonal beverages, and oh, yeah, I can start doing these pumpkin patch or apple orchard type things. Well, people have been doing them for a month, right? Because especially where
Yes.
we're in Illinois, is it wavers. We went from 90 degrees in July and August, so like low 70s is a high. People want to say, oh, if it's 70s, it's summer. But no, that's fall. Like, if the highest it gets is 70, that's fall. If it snows a little, that's also fall. The point is, most of the time, it's going to be in the like 40s to 60s. So I don't think fall has disappeared. I think people have gotten numb to it because of all of the shared same ideas, like the word crisp, that fly around on social media. And I realized today that word has no meaning in the weather realm.
And crisp is almost more of an image, is it not? Like, I feel like crisp is like kind of sunny, but like you said, also a little gray. The leaves are changing. And I feel like it's more of like an image rather than like a specific feel, so to speak. Because if you were to say, give me the outlines of crisp, I don't know that I could tell you.
It's chilly. It's well,
Yeah.
okay. Wait, do they say
I
that?
s-
Do they say that, Tyler? I want to know. Do you have anybody in your life up there? If they don't use crisp, if you said, "Oh, it's kind of crisp today," would they know what you mean?
Yeah, I feel
Okay.
like, but I feel like if you took a picture, like I like a still of like just like an environment, like of the environment, like in the fall, and you say, okay, pick which one is crisp. You can't, because you have to feel the crispness in the air.
Right. It's crisp air. Yeah, that's
Mhm.
true. Huh. I don't know, man. We have so many words. How do we still use them wrong?
Bob Costas has found a way to use all of the words correctly during the Guardians and Yankees series. Again, still to come, the rant on Bob Costas. But no, I don't know. I there's like 2 weeks, 2 weeks of the year where I sleep with my windows open, and that's fall to me. That's like, all right. And now we're more into winter. But even still, Jack, to your point of, oh, that's not the right button. That is though. Even still, to your point of uh we have this false sense of what fall is. Like, the actual season itself ends on December the 22nd.
Ah, no, forget about that. Too much has changed in time, and I'm sure there's some sort of spatial relativity that because we rotate slightly off our axis each year, like 250 years ago when they set these seasons up, they meant something else. All I know is that it still exists, whether it's September, October, November, August, September, October. I'm picturing a calendar in my head and I still can't even figure it out. Fall is still there. It 100% is there. People have been doing fall things for 5 weeks now, and they're going to keep doing fall things for another 4. So don't tell me it's gone.
All right. Well, how about you tell me about Ezra Miller?
Oh, dude, this is one of those intercepted at the goal lines where the only potential humorous element that I could bring to the table is that it is like a big name celebrity, and so there's a little bit of a zeitgeisty feel of, oh, this guy again. But really, that's the story: is this guy again? Actor Ezra Miller. He has pleaded not guilty to burglary in the state of Vermont, which is now another place on his list of his global tour of not doing very good things to the people around him. There was the assault case not so long ago in Hawaii. I remember he had some sort of negative interaction with fans or something in Germany a while back. But he's a pretty prominent actor. He has cited some of the issues to like mental health problems, which, if that's the case, again, not something really to make light of. But it definitely, with everything that's been going on, we talked about the Warner Brothers Cartoon Network stuff in the past. And we've talked about just in general the landscape of like Hollywood and stuff. It's kind of crazy that this guy is still supposed to be one of the flagship actors in this giant DC superhero movie launching universe.
Yeah,
And
for those who are unaware, Ezra Miller is the Flash.
yes. So this is Ezra Miller. All the pictures you're going to see of him are of his brief appearances as the Flash in movies so far. But it just is weird to see a guy who keeps getting into strange situations. He had the one interaction that went like at the beginning of COVID where he was with a fan, and there was a video of him like pushing a woman, and then it's like, oh, she asked me to do it. It's just there's a lot of strange things going on. I don't know. Do you remember seeing it? It was in like a grocery store or something, and it was
No,
like,
and to be honest with you, I don't know if it's just the side of like Twitter that I'm on or whatever it might be, but the latest incident where he was robbing people in Vermont is the only incident that I've heard of Ezra Miller.
wait, really?
So I swear,
No way.
swear.
Okay, okay. If you go to his
Really?
Wikipedia, here is the contents: 1, early life; 2, career; 3, personal life; 4, controversies and legal issues; 4.1, disorderly conduct; 4.2, strangling incident; 4.3, oh, that's the one I was. He didn't push it. He strangled the person. Yeah. 4.3, Hawaii arrests; 4.4, relationship with, I don't know this name; 4.5, harassment allegations; 4.6, Vermont farm incidents; 4.7, burglary charge, and then 4.8 is like mental health issues. Like, I don't know how you're just hearing this now, and he's not really in the news for anything other than these things at this point.
Sure. I don't know. Maybe
Maybe it's
a
better that way.
similar comparison, right? Like, by no means was he to the extent of Ezra Miller and the things that you're listing off, but like Robert Downey Jr., we put him in a closet for a little while he figured out his stuff, and then we brought him back out, and he was Iron Man. It's like, in every way, shape, and form, DC just does not deliver with their movies, right? Like, they've got the guy that should be put away in the closet for a little bit and then maybe brought back out as the Flash, just actively being the Flash and actively robbing people. Their movies are kind of disjointed and out of whack. Like, the DC universe is the antithesis of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, right? Like, it's the complete opposite.
Well, and it's got, when you said he's like the first thing that came to my mind, I'm like, he's about to say Antonio Brown. And like, I don't know that would be a crazy comparison. Like, they both probably have issues that are beyond our knowledge, just like seeing the headlines and stuff, but they both do things that are very unpredictable in all sorts of places all over the world, and kind of damage the people around them. So yeah, no, not something that's like a super ha laugh at sort of thing, but just one of those like, what did he do this time?
Yeah.
And he did another thing.
All right, I'll wrap up Intercepted at the goal line with just Draymond Green, right? Like we talked about last week, the punch, where something was said between him and Warriors guard Jordan Poole, and Green ends up cold cocking Jordan Poole in the face. And this week, the developments that have kind of spurred from this are Andrew Wiggins and Jordan Poole getting contract extensions. The main situation, one of the main situations that's been talked about after the Draymond Green situation, is that he's likely in the last year of his contract. He's got an opt-out after this season and is looking for his money. He has been the underpaid player. Some people have compared him to like Scottie Pippen when he signed his contract extension with the Bulls in the 90s. He signed it and was automatically underpaid. They've kind of likened Green's contract to that. He took less money in order to stay with the team because he's so important to the team, and he has this incident in a volatile moment during the course of when he's going to be asking for money, and they didn't suspend him. They didn't really fine him. They just held him out of practice, and instead it seems the punishment is, well, here's the money we might have paid you in the form of 4-year contracts for Andrew Wiggins and Jordan Poole.
Yeah, Draymond Green has also, it's tough to compare because like he's been through all of the good moments and he's been good for a long time, whereas Wiggins and Poole are still newer to the fold. But it also is like, I've heard the discussions of kind of scapegoatism, like this incident has given the Warriors the reason they needed to not have to, make these tougher calls, and that
Sure.
Draymond might one day not be a Warrior, even though he's been there his entire career. Is there are people who will find more value in him maybe than the Warriors will with this sort of new wave that they're able to build around Steph and Clay. And Draymond's performance simply isn't what it used to be. He's still an elite defender. There's no question about it. He could still guard 1 through 5, it seems, but he's a bit more of a liability on the offensive end. And, you've always had the suspensions and issues like that. So part of it is a little bit bigger than what actually happened. And it was Jordan Poole was probably getting this giant extension anyways, and Wiggins was certainly somebody they didn't want to lose, and they want to make sure they keep him. So there's a bit more to it, but I'm, like I said, a huge Draymond Green fan. And so I hope that whatever happens, does right by him, because I do think he's one of the best personalities the NBA has to offer.
Well, and he's somebody that I like a lot. And apparently he's been dealing with a lot of things off the court that he has said is kind of the reasoning for his mismanagement of the situation between he and Jordan Poole. But Tyler, I bring the question to you about the situation. Have you ever, on any team that you've played on, had a guy who in the locker room or during practices or whatever may not have been the best team guy, but on the field and in competition was so good, and maybe not even good, but so integral in the success of the team that everybody else just kind of had to put up with him? And how do you deal with that as a player?
I think there's guys like that wherever you are. There's always going to be some guy who's just really good, and you just can't deny it. A lot of the really great players, though, are team guys, so I will say that. I personally have never been on a team with really any of those kind of characters, but I know my friends have. They've been a part of some teams where they've had like a star on the team, and there's they act very differently. They're not a team guy. They miss team functions. They can just go like missing for a couple days and come back, and nothing's the problem because he's that guy on the field. When it comes to dealing with him, I guess it's just really just allowing him to be in his space. You can't really drag a guy like that along, because like he thinks he's so elite that he's above everyone. So you just kind of got to let him do his thing, and then let the people on the team just be amongst themselves and try to grow through that.
It'll be interesting to see how it all unfolds either way. And I love hearing a player's perspective on it, right? It doesn't matter what sport you're playing. Getting that insight is, I think, always valuable. And we'll see where he plays next season. We'll see where he plays the rest of this season, right? I would assume that Draymond Green is there for the entirety of this season. I have no doubts about that. But certainly, if you're looking for takes, right, you start to pan through, okay, might they not? I don't believe so, but certainly we'll see where he goes next season. And maybe at some point we hear some expose on his podcast about what exactly happened. I'd like now, though, to move on to week 6 of the NFL, which is not yet wrapped up in real time, but will be wrapped up once we release this podcast. I want to bring up the Seattle Seahawks. I wanted to bring them up last week during episode 5, and we didn't get the chance to, but I need to bring them up now because without a doubt, they are one of the most surprising teams of this young NFL season. Am I correct in that?
I don't know.
I think it's surprising in the fact that Geno is good. Like, I think there was a lot of expectations of Russell Wilson being the guy in Seattle for so long, and then, oh, well, who's going to take his place, and not really having a viable candidate for that. And then Geno Smith coming out of nowhere and just playing like he was in West Virginia back when he was in college. And I think, his development has been a little bit different than most, but you could see that his quarterback play has definitely helped that team out tremendously.
Yeah, I don't know that they've been super surprising. I think we came into the year, they were expected to be one of the worst teams in the NFL, right? They gutted the system to get all these picks in the Russ trade, and there really wasn't too much going for them outside of, I don't know, DK Metcalf was like their one really good young player, and then they had some other playmakers at other positions that weren't maybe part of the next generation Seahawks. And they're 3-3 now, and they don't really have any super impressive wins. The teams that they've beat are all teams that are worse than we thought they were going to be. So I don't know that I would say the Seahawks have been surprising as far as wins, losses, and records go. But the on-field visibility, when you're watching the Seahawks play, that's probably like what Tyler was saying, is I don't think we expected any quarterback play, and we've actually gotten, prior to this week, pretty consistent elite quarterback production, and still very top-notch even through 6 weeks.
Yeah, I'm utterly surprised, shocked even by Geno Smith. He has been Incredible, right? For like the standards that we have for Geno Smith, he has been utterly incredible. He leads the league in completion percentage at over 70% going into yesterday's ball game. I think a lot of it probably has to do with the offensive coordinator in Seattle, Shane Waldron, who I think is separating himself as maybe the next big coaching hire, right? Like last year, it seemed like it was Daboll. This year, it might end up being Shane Waldron because of what he's doing with this offense. They're very well coached. They're the second least penalized team in football. They run the ball extremely well, and not only well, but efficiently. They are number one in yards per rush at 5.5 yards. And I assume that only went up after the performance that we had from Kenneth Walker yesterday. They're also third in yards per pass at almost 8 yards per pass. And like I said, number one in completion percentage in football. 60% of their plays are through the air, and they're getting tremendous efficiency from Geno Smith. I just think it's awesome.
So this is a quarterback that kind of has been lost in time, but when he first entered the league in 2013 with the Jets, he actually wasn't terrible. He did go 8-8, started every game at quarterback. The biggest problems that he had in those first couple seasons where he was a full-time starter, and since 2014, he hasn't had that title until this year. The completion was a big thing, and the interceptions was another thing. And he hasn't thrown too many interceptions this season either. So it's one that, even though it was a 7-year, 8-year gap in the middle, with time and different systems, he's been on, I think, 3 or 4 teams since the Jets. It's worked that he now is in a place where he's an effective quarterback. And that's a very rare thing that your quarterback is getting some sort of second chance after being part of a failed team. I mean, those are some pretty bad Jets teams that he was on. And B, the fact that he has made use of it as not just a backup who filled in for a game or two and was good. They gave him the reins. They could have gone with Drew Lock, who's a bit younger, and maybe you could pitch a case for, but they gave it to the guy who won in camp. And maybe they don't need to take a quarterback next year if they find value at other positions. You expect this is a team that probably looks for a quarterback, but 3-3 has got to be pretty good considering I think they were put on for about 5 wins this season.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead, Tyler.
I think it just comes down to, I feel like a lot of people definitely forget that as a professional player, you're still growing. So you have to grow into your role as a pro. There's huge differences between, college football and going into the pros. And I mean, for starters, it's just getting to know like the system. You're playing a much more intense schedule. You're playing the absolute best of the best. You're playing Alabama every week, and you have to prepare for that. And as someone coming right out of college and being on a not great Jets franchise, I mean, it's tough to do that. But for him to stay the course and to get to where he is, I think it's a testament to Geno Smith as a player. I mean, definitely sticking it out and not just hanging it up when things didn't go his way.
Well, what was the line? Something about somebody called, or they never called on me, but I called back. What did he say after the week 1 win?
Oh yeah.
I know what you're saying.
Oh shoot, I'll find it for you. Something about that.
Yeah, they didn't call, or I didn't call back, or something like that. I forget.
They wrote me off, but I ain't right back though.
That's right. That's correct. Yeah. See, leave it to me to screw up a pretty epic line.
They left me a voicemail, but I was unavailable at the moment. Like, no, that's not what he said.
No, that's not as cool.
You talking about missed calls?
Not here. But we'll see if the Seahawks continue to trend up, or if they start to regress to what we assume to be their normal standing. They play LA, the Chargers, in week 7. They'll get the New York Giants, who are good. Big question mark.
I mean,
week 8.
Part of the takeaway with this Seattle thing too, when you're like, oh, aren't they kind of surprising? Like, they're 3-3. There's a lot of teams in the middle of the pack right now. That I think NFL Week 6 has continued to reveal one of the bigger truths of the season, which is there aren't very many good NFL teams. Like, everybody's
and there are some
fine.
very heavily injured NFL teams too that I think is kind of bringing us to where we are as well.
True. And some of those heavily injured ones are the ones who are doing better than expected anyways. Take your Dallas Cowboys, your New York Giants, who are doing fine. But you look at the Seahawks schedule. Oh, they beat the Broncos. Oh, they beat the Cardinals. Those were two teams that were pretty popular coming into the season. Should have winning records. I'm like, oh, I hate to break it to you, but no, they're not great. Well, who is good? I said earlier the Bills and Chiefs are tier 1. Tier 2 might just be the Eagles. And then so you have a top 2 and then a third. And after that, I don't know. You get lost after a while. Do you throw the Giants in the next group? Are the Buccaneers good and they just lose a lot? Are the Packers good and they lose a lot? The NFL just is potentially a worse product than it has been in the past, but it's competitive.
Yeah, I think that might be where we're headed, right? Is like just a league that's kind of very close all over the place. There's smart, competent football players on every franchise. I think part of that has to do with the inclusion of analytics and realizing like, oh, this guy might be more valuable than we think because the numbers tell us so, where normally that kind of a guy would be written off. I don't have a specific example, but I'm willing to bet that that's a real thing. Is like typically we would have written this guy off, but we're not going to now because new era football, this new zeitgeist that we're in, says to do something else. And so we'll bring him in, whatever the guy is, whether it's Geno Smith or whomever. It's just we're in a position right now where I think we're on the precipice of a new zeitgeist in football, and not a lot of teams know how to separate themselves yet.
Yeah. I like, even as you're talking, I'm like, there's got to be somebody I'm forgetting. There's got to be another good team out there. Like the Vikings, are they good? But
I don't know, right? Because it's Kirk Cousins. You can never really trust him. I think there's 3 good teams right now. You can tell me if I'm wrong. 2 of them are in the AFC. We've talked about them already. It's the Bills and the Chiefs. I think there is one actually good NFC team at the moment, and it's the Eagles.
And that's where we are right now. If you were to rank it, tier it, standings, whatever. But if I told you that the Eagles and the Buccaneers were playing on a neutral field, who would you pick to win? You can't confidently say the Eagles will beat Tampa.
I think as of today, I think that I could. I think that Tampa's looked
rough.
I think they've looked rough. Yeah. I mean, Tom's not playing as well as he has, and he's 45, so of course he's not going to. He's also missing center guard on his offensive line. He's had inconsistencies on who he's throwing the ball to. There was a week where his number 1 wide receiver was Cole Beasley, right? So like certainly things could turn around.
Cole Beasley's retired.
He just retired after that. So.
Oh my gosh.
He played one more NFL game and was like, actually, I'm out, right? So like it's possible that the Buccaneers turn it around, but like today, if you were to put those 2 teams on a neutral field, I would take the Eagles. I think it's a relatively easy decision.
Okay.
Let me ask you guys a question though. Would you rather have a league that has games or is more competitive in a sense like this, or would you rather have just like the 2 or 3 teams that run both sides of the league?
As a gambling guy, I would, as a person that gambles, right? Like I would rather have a couple of teams that run away with it because it gives me a couple of certainties every week. As a fan of football and just sitting down and watching it every week, I like parity, right? I like seeing variation every week and not really being able to ascertain like, okay, this team is definitively good or this team isn't. Right. But then I bring it back to being this guy sitting in the chair talking about football and not being able to decide, are they good? Are they not good? Like, and I don't like that as being this guy in this role wearing this hat. I don't like it here. So I guess the majority of me says, no, I don't love this. But there's also like that fan side of me that says, yeah, this is fine. I like this.
I think you have to look at the in between on that too, that it's not so binary. Is right now, I love the fact that the standings are all over the place and we're, more than a quarter of the way, a third of the way through the season, right? Week 6 of 18, we're a third of the way through, and the playoff picture is changing so fast because every day you look and it's new teams jumping up with tiebreakers and things like that. We just hit bye week season, which will change things as it moves along too. But there's a difference between everybody being close in record and nobody being good. They can coexist, but they don't have to. I would love a world where the Buccaneers losing on the road to the Steelers this last week was like oh my gosh, they pulled off the upset. I can't believe it. But the problem is this is now the second or third iteration of the Buccaneers looking bad. Same with the Packers and the Jets. To some extent, the Ravens and Giants, both sides of the ball. It's happening too frequently. I don't want people who are just running it. I like the idea that any team can beat any team. That's what, for me, separates NFL from college football, for example, where most games end exactly as you expect they would as far as wins and losses. But you watch the games, and there's nobody that you can believe in. I haven't just been, oh, wow, that was a nice play. Oh, wow, that was a nice game. No, it's like, oh, they're actually so much worse than I thought they were. The Broncos, the Packers, the Buccaneers,
The Chargers to some extent.
the Chargers, the Bengals. Like, there are way too many teams that also haven't been replaced by anybody. Because you look at the Giants and you go, that's probably a pretty fraudulent 5-1. I thought the Vikings would be good. So that 5-1, I know to a lot of other people looks kind of sketchy. The Cooper Rush Cowboys, it's not like we've traded anything. It's that the top teams fell down and the bottom teams are just kind of still where they were. That's the problem.
Well, and there's a lot of teams that tried to hit the reset button all at the same time. Look at the quarterback carousel that we had this past offseason. And like I said, there's a lot of teams that hit the reset button, and not as many teams were like, we're going to go for it because we think we can compete with the Chiefs and the Bills and who we perceive to be the Chargers and Bucks, right? Like there was so many teams that were just saying, all right, let's reshuffle the deck. Let's restart. This next draft class is going to be stocked with talent. We'll trade our quarterback and figure it out in a year, right? I think that's just kind of where we're at. Maybe this is a one-off. Maybe this is the NFL of the future where everybody's just kind of very close. Nobody really separates from one another in any given year. It's possible that that's the truth.
Yeah. I mean, I was just curious to have your thoughts on it because I agree with Jack in the fact that I think both are can be true at the same time where not all the talent or the teams are very good, but it's more competitive. I think a more competitive league with the same variation would be great.
Yeah, I just want to see guys go out and get it done. And each week it feels like I'm watching so many games where it's who's not messing up, like who's not fumbling this at the last second, who's not making the horrible decision on fourth down early in the fourth quarter. It's like, no, I want people to outclass each other. And right now we're going the opposite way. But it is admittedly fun to have close standings.
Tyler, I want you to be able to spread out just a little bit here and feel comfortable in talking about the next topic, which is college football. I did want to have a discussion on this Alabama-Tennessee game because I did think that it was a huge pivotal point in the college football season. Alabama is outside of the top four for what seems like the first time in like 4 decades, right? Like it just seems so long that Alabama has been a fixture of the top four and destined for the college football playoff. Now things are not so certain for the Crimson Tide. Tennessee, the Vols, step in. Good old Rocky Top is a top 3 team for the first time, or a top 4 team rather, for the first time since 2002, and they scored more points against Alabama than any opponent has since 1907.
Jeez.
What's different about this Tennessee game? I know that you've watched very closely for a long time, your cohort, so to speak, in the college football realm. What makes this Tennessee team different?
Well, I would just like to preface this that the last team Tennessee lost to was the Purdue Boilermakers, and I was on that team. So
yes, you were. Right.
I'm going to hang my hat on. I'm going to hang my hat on that.
Music City Bowl last year in
correct
Nashville.
Correct.
Nashville. Yeah.
Absolutely correct. But yeah, you could definitely tell there's a big difference in how Tennessee has come out this whole season. Looking at last year, as far as like film study, they had an explosive offense. They were getting it done on defense from time to time, but it was still missing something. You could see opportunity there. But when you turn on the games on the weekends and you watch Tennessee this year, I feel like there's not as many opportunities. I feel like they firm things up on defense. I feel like their offense is still that much more explosive. Hendon Hooker got another year under his belt. And man, is he lighting up the scoreboard, man. He is on fire.
Hendon Hooker.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, talk about an awesome year. I mean, he's trending for the Heisman this year, which I think is rightfully so.
He's got to be the favorite right now, right?
Well,
No.
yeah, especially
Not the betting favorite.
Oh, well, I mean, that's typically a good indicator of who's the favorite, right?
Who is the favorite right now?
CJ Stroud.
It's still CJ
Yeah.
Stroud. Yeah, he was preseason favorite and hasn't really done anything to mess up yet.
Okay, fair enough. But yeah, I think it's trending in Tennessee's favor. God forbid there's going to be a trap game coming up with Tennessee, and if they get through that trap game, I believe they play LSU they just played LSU.
They've got an SEC bye week by playing UT Martin, and then they host Kentucky and go to Georgia. So that's 2 ranked opponents that could trip them up on their undefeated quest.
That's so tough that they have to play Georgia too.
Yeah, but I don't know. Just really run away with every game they've played. I think Tennessee can give them a run for their money. I think Alabama's still the most disciplined team of the two, even though Georgia's results look better. But I think it was in 2 ways. Tennessee looks good, but I think it also is showing that Alabama isn't that good this year, and I think there's more to that as well, just for the sake of the playoff this year.
Yeah, this is an Alabama team that they barely survived playing against Texas earlier in the season. They won 20-19. They scraped out the win against Texas A&M last week, which I think we did touch on a little bit. So to me, it's also kind of crazy that Alabama is still ranked number 6 after losing to Tennessee. And I joked with a friend, I'm like, I'm expecting them to be number 2 in the rankings this week because Tennessee's going to move so high up that loss becomes so high quality that it actually helps them rather than if they had won the game. But yeah, you look the fact that Georgia's number 1, Tennessee's 3, Alabama 6, Ole Miss 7. Like, it's not the same teams that we always used to see at the top in the SEC. A couple of them are. But definitely Hendon Hooker has done a good job of putting Tennessee back on the map. And they've played well to this point. It's just they're not one of the traditional 2010s blue bloods. So like Tyler said, I'm sort of just waiting for the downfall. I'm not rooting for it, but you just feel like there's no way a team that isn't one of the 10 that have already made the playoffs make it.
Yeah, Hendon Hooker is the he's him of the week. I'm fully on the Hendon Hooker train. I don't know if anybody else can tell, but that guy I feel like is super special this year. I don't know how that translates to the NFL. Currently, he's ranked as the 6th best quarterback prospect coming up in this year's draft. I don't know that he gets much higher than that. There are some pretty good quarterback prospects coming out this year, but Hendon Hooker is definitely somebody to kind of trap in your brain. Remember that name, and let's see where he's at in 3 years. Again, I feel like this is a week where I don't get to say much about baseball, though I am absolutely decked out right now, and I'm just realizing that in baseballism apparel. I do want to say real quick about, just the MLB playoffs in general, I think have been really fun. I don't know that there's been anything in specific that MLB itself as the entity did to make this better. I think, though, that there are some really fun matchups to watch. I think the best way to describe it is by pointing out the Yankees Guardians series. You have this team in New York who is on a tear. It seems like they're on a collision course with the World Series. They have Aaron Judge having one of the single best statistical seasons an American League hitter has ever had. They've got great pitching going into this offseason or this postseason that they typically haven't had before. Their bullpen is a little bit better than it has been before. And still, they are having fits trying to get rid of the Cleveland Guardians. And why is that? Because the Guardians play this new age style of baseball where it's this new age style, but they marry it beautifully with old school, put the ball in play, small ball. We don't have to get all of our runs via the long ball. Like, it is beautiful stuff to watch. Terry Francona, who's the manager of the Guardians, knows exactly what he has and utilizes it to the best of his ability. You match that offensively with the fact that the Guardians have tremendous pitching. And it's something to behold. And I think that we've seen that happen a lot of times this postseason.
It's interesting too because Cleveland isn't a team that's super far removed from, I guess you almost are. I guess I'm trying to think. Would you call this like the next wave of Cleveland baseball, even though the last one was only 4 or 5 years ago?
You almost
But
have to, though, right?
right,
Because they
it's like it's a
traded so many
totally different
pieces.
team.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a totally different team. But it's similar that when you say, "Oh, they've got all this great pitching," I'm like, isn't that what happened last time? Like, oh wait, they've
Yeah,
got
but
some guys who are maybe playing more than they were expected to play, and they had this crazy arsenal. And so it's cool to see that Francona can do it again with a different group.
yeah. Well, think about it. The rotation the last time they had a serious playoff run, the 2016 World Series run,
You had what?
it was Corey Kluber,
You had was
Trevor
Carrasco
Bauer,
on that? Trevor Bauer,
Carlos Carrasco. You still had Andrew
Clevenger.
Miller. Clevenger was there, but I don't know that he pitched. And
Who
then
else was with Andrew Miller? They had Cody Allen.
Cody Allen was their closer, and now it's reshuffle the deck where we're kind of a while removed from that, right? But they still have had some of the best pitching of any MLB franchise, and it's Shane Bieber, and it's
Tristan McKenzie,
who's phenomenal and has 3 pitches. The guy throws 3 pitches, and he dominates people, shoves it down people's throats. Their bullpen is top notch. They've got Emmanuel Clase, he's just incredible. Again, a guy who throws just 3 pitches, but also throws a cutter at 102 miles an hour. The guy is absolutely incredible. I've got all the great things to say about the Cleveland franchise, and this is only one singular matchup. This is only one divisional round matchup. We've had so many good moments already. I talked about at the top of the show, right? Like San Diego taking down Big Brother in 4 games in San Diego with the rally goose, right? Like so many great moments there. So many great moments as the Phillies topple Atlanta, who for the longest time have tormented them throughout the course of the 90s and the early 2000s, and even now in the 2020s, right? Like this has been one of the best playoff runs brackets that I can remember.
And I could be wrong, but my finger on the pulse of things without being super in depth in the minds and the TV ratings of everybody watching, it's different in the MLB. I think casual sports fans, like to see things that are less familiar. I think there's something about seeing the Mariners in the playoffs and seeing the Phillies succeeding and seeing the Dodgers losing, and depending on the outcome of tonight's games, which people will hear by the time that this podcast is up, maybe the Yankees go down as well. I think in other sports, it's very important that big name, brand name, historic teams go far because it's something that people can kind of relate to. But I think in MLB, because you have such a regional fan base on each team, that once your team is out, it feels like everybody defaults to, well, I'm going to pick this team because they've kind of been a fun story. And the Yankees are not the fun story. The Dodgers are not the fun story. The Mariners are the fun story, not the Astros, the Phillies. Cleveland, even though we just talked about, we had them a few years ago, they literally have a new team and a new team name. Like, these are things that people are refamiliarizing themselves with. And I think that's what's been successful for baseball, is this draws in the casual sports fan more than a Yankees-Dodgers World Series would have.
Completely. And I can't say that this is an organic thought that I had on my own. I did grab this from Twitter. I don't remember who tweeted it, but somebody had brought up an excellent point in saying that we have a 111 win LA Dodgers team this year. 111 wins is unfathomable. It is a crazy amount of wins in a singular MLB season. But that team was not fun. There was nobody on that team who was outright having fun, right? And having these moments where oh, we can attach ourselves to this. Think about the Mariners for a second. They had a dude, nobody knows who the hell Cal Raleigh is at the beginning of the 2022 season. But what happens? He hits a home run to send Seattle to the playoffs for the first time in 21 years, acquires a dope nickname like the Big Dumper, and then doesn't just roll over and die in the playoffs. He has huge moments for that team in the playoffs. He plays with torn ligaments in his thumb and battles through 18 straight innings catching Major League Baseball with torn ligaments in his thumb. Like, this is the type of stuff that people emotionally attach themselves to. And there was like the big teams this year just simply did not have that. The Dodgers don't have that. Without Aaron Judge, the Yankees don't have a storyline that you're like, I want to root for that team. The Braves, to some extent, did have that this year in the fact that they were down so much in the standings and climbed their way back. But aside from that, they didn't have anybody that you were going to attach yourself to and say, I love this player. I want them to win. All of these smaller teams, I shouldn't say smaller teams, all of these teams that you wouldn't think would be in this position have had those moments. Seattle, even though they're gone, had those moments. Philly has had those moments this year, albeit some brain-bending stuff. Like, they've had moments this year where you can say, this is really cool that they're here. They fired their manager this year. They're using an interim manager, and they are in the NLCS for the first time since 2009. In over a decade, they're there. San Diego.
The trade deadline. I mean, that's one where you open up everybody's eyes and you go, oh, this is a team that they're not the best of the best every year, but they want to win, and they're actually going to make a splashy move.
Right, and they haven't been in the NLCS since in 24 years, almost a quarter century since they've been in this situation. We are seeing some of the most compelling baseball being played on in the playoffs right now. It's exactly what MLB needed, and again, I'll take my hat off and say congratulations. They made a great move by scheduling the playoffs the way that they did, because a lot of nights it's the only thing we have, and it's been awesome. So with that, I'll get off my soapbox. Cease my rant.
Hey, baseball's finally given you a soapbox. So the last few years, you stand on the soapbox and your knees are shaking and you're all wobbly because you're like, oh, I don't know how I'm going to defend baseball this time. But finally, you've got this ironclad, look at the games on TV, and nobody can complain.
But I do want to complain about one thing before we move to blank you very much.
God.
Bob Costas. Holy hell. My God. Listen, I'm a play-by-play guy. I'm a broadcaster by trade. I have huge respect for the titans of the industry that have come before me, right? All of them. They have paved the way for people like me to be in a situation where I'm at. But Bob Costas, I can't say he's past his prime because he's still very good at what he does, but he is incessant and does not stop talking.
So what do you, when you hear Bob Costas, what's the first thing you think of him like covering? What sport do you associate him mostly with?
Because of my age and where I picked up, where I started picking up guys' voices and, oh, this is this guy, I know him, I know that name. What I think of him as the Olympics guy.
Yes, and I think that is like that. Maybe that's a generational thing, but in my mind, part of it is that's where he's good. Like that sort of job he has nailed for a long time, and it hasn't translated in this MLB postseason. It's a different thing he's doing than the hosting the Sunday Night Football pregame or being at Olympics Media HQ or whatever. So part of it is we try and turn every broadcast figure into this Swiss Army knife that can do all sorts of things, and I just don't think that's doable for everyone.
No, but Bob Costas is a Hall of Fame baseball broadcaster.
Yes.
Like, he has been very good at this thing. He was somebody that for a long time, the companion in the companion sport that is baseball was Bob Costas. But he's telling these long, drawn out stories about, of course, you remember in the 1950 playoffs, this random guy that you've never heard, Bumper Jonesy or whoever it might be, did this amazing feat. Like, it's like, okay, yes, there is a place and there is a time for that, but like, oh my goodness.
But at least he's a funny guy too, right? I mean, you heard he called Shane Bieber Justin, right?
Bieber.
I mean,
I was watching
that was a zinger. Oh, good one, guy.
So somebody has come up with a Bob Costas drinking game, and I think with it being tonight, the final game that we'll hear of Bob Costas this postseason, I think that we should all participate and maybe record some Snapchats later on and use those for next week. But so you are to take a sip of your drink when Bob Costas talks over Ron Darling. Or if we miss a big play because he's in the middle of a story, you take a sip. Take a sip if he complains about that day's game. and take a drink if he talks about something that happened before 1950. Okay, you are to.
Oh, that last one's not his fault though. That's all anybody with MLB affiliation wants to talk about is things that happened before 1950.
You are to take a shot if he talks about the Boone family, Aaron Boone and his family. You are to take a shot if he says the name Indians. And you are to take a shot if he mispronounces a player's name, because he's been doing that a ton as well. Lastly, you are to finish your drink if he makes a terrible pop culture reference.
Oh, that's like
We could
it's
be
not
pretty
difficult.
sloppy
It's
if we
difficult
followed
to
the rules here.
survive. Yeah. That could be the end of a few people on this planet if they listened closely to the rules.
Yeah, especially the talking over Ron Darling part. Just God, I could talk about this for a little bit longer, but I think I'll cease and we'll move on to blank you very much. It's
Wait, I'm actually going to call for a pivot. I'd like to jump ahead. We don't have to switch the whole segment, but this ties in with one of the things that I had that I was going to talk about.
Do you want to do low hanging fruit first?
Yeah, because
let's do
I
low-hanging
think
fruit.
this is an organic switch from Bob Costas to my low hanging fruit, which let's see if I can do the cool little explanation thing. We're to take a topic from sports or pop culture that is begging to be made fun of. It doesn't have to be, something super, super popular. It could be a funny little thing, all sorts of stuff. And with the Bob Costas comes Al Michaels, who is also a Hall of Fame broadcaster, a titan of the industry.
In
all
two
of the
sports!
all the praises that you want to give Bob Costas, you give to Al Michaels too. And one of the tragedies of the last week in the NFL is that the Chicago Bears-Washington Commanders game was broadcast for everyone around the country to see. I guess is broadcast everywhere streamed, right? Because it's on Amazon Prime. So
Yeah.
maybe if you aren't an Amazon subscriber and you didn't go on Twitch, maybe you dodged this. But the game was expected to be terrible. It somehow didn't meet those expectations. It was a horrible game, probably the worst game of the entire season, at least that I've watched or heard about. And Al Michaels, who has had a tragic fall from Sunday Night Football to Thursday Night Football on Amazon doesn't know the names of half the NFL players, Kirk Herbstreit. Al Michaels has had such a rough go of it this last Thursday. He was wrong about so many things. And it wasn't like bad takes. It was just objective falsehoods about what was happening on the field in front of him. A flag would get thrown and he's like, well, that's coming back. That's offensive pass interference. And the ref would come out and say it's defensive pass interference. He'd go, oh, I don't know why the Bears aren't taking a timeout here. And it was the 2-minute warning. There would be no reason to take a timeout. So it's just like, I know that you're better than this. And I don't know if it's brain rot because he didn't see a touchdown the week before, which he also mentioned a zillion times is, oh, I don't know if I remember how to call a touchdown because Broncos Colts didn't have a touchdown.
Right.
But it was so disheartening to hear. Not only did he not seem like he was having fun with the game because he got back-to-back absolute stinkers of matchups, but he also was just wrong on so many things. And as somebody who, unlike Ryan Sartori, is no longer a broadcaster, but I once did it, and even with him, that would be mortifying to find out that I just said the incorrect thing. It had to have been at least 7 times that I noticed, and I even missed a couple drives. So that was I don't know how we make fun of it other than just like, maybe it's time to retire. Like maybe NBC, literally when they said, we're not keeping you for Sunday Night Football, they should have just given him enough money so that he didn't have to keep doing this. But this was an absolutely poor showing.
I still think that he's got juice left. I truly do, because just last year we heard him call, I think, some pretty phenomenal games. But the past 2 weeks, I have never heard him sound less sharp than he has sounded. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that he called an absolutely awful game between the Broncos and the
Colts.
Broncos and Colts. He calls that game. It's absolutely terrible. And he knows the next game is going to be bad. And so I think he came in with the enthusiasm of, I don't know, of like a small child taking their cough medicine. Like he came in with that amount of enthusiasm about calling this Bears and Commanders game. Almost pulled a Bob Costas. And I think that's kind of why we got what we got.
Just like maybe it's because he's got a new partner, and so it's not Alan Chris like it has been for a long time. Now it's Alan Kirk, who I also not a big Kirk Herbstreit fan. Part of it is that the quality of game has gone down this year. Also, I think the quality of broadcasting around the league has taken a hit too. I'm surprised on Sundays by how many times I'm like, oh, this person is really struggling.
And I think that is in large part because everybody is trying to adapt to this new era of like they know what they are saying is being dissected and picked up on a word by word basis, and so a lot of guys are trying to get too like shout outy, if that makes sense. Or it's like one person that I think does a really good job of it is Adam Amin. Adam Amin makes pop culture references and interacts with his color analyst really well, and like flows in and out of conversations and knows like what he's saying fits and works, etc. But there are a lot of guys who are just simply not very good at it, and it's very clear and very plain to hear.
I think there's too much money. I think that's part of the problem. I think these networks have so much money that they throw around, and instead of getting more like broadcast type people, like we're getting Mark Sanchez, who doesn't. I mean, I felt so harsh to single out one person, but like
It's okay.
Sanchez is
It's Mark
tough
Sanchez.
to listen to. But I don't even want to know how much money he's making doing something that he hasn't really ever done. Maybe he has a communications degree or background or something, but as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't sound great. But Mark Sanchez in the booth, like that means something to people watching, because I don't think people watching really listen as closely as they could. If you really listen, like there are a lot of people that fell off, and part of it was the big switcheroo, the carousel of commentators that happened this offseason. But man, that Thursday night game, if it wasn't bad enough on the field, Al Michaels really drove me to a point where I'm like, I don't know if I can watch this with sound on. I'm so sorry, Al.
For those who don't really pay attention to the broadcast, if you hear Al Michaels say "meanwhile," it typically means that he is either tying in an alternate storyline that's happening as he's talking about something, or he's messed up massively, because he kept going, it's incomplete, and went on to talk about something else, and it would go, as a flag was thrown, he would go, and meanwhile, regardless. Anyway, let us continue on with our low hanging fruit. Tyler, Colorado fans stormed the field after we've seen solitaire being played on the berm. Now they're storming the field.
Yes, they got their first win against Cal this past weekend in overtime. To be 1-5, and their fans were so excited they stormed the field. I mean, talk about just a dredge of a game. Final score was 20-13. Colorado played 3 different quarterbacks.
Oh my!
Yeah,
Chips was in it that day.
Oh, he was in for a treat. And Cal just didn't have it in them this week. They started hot. They've kind of gone a little flat the past couple of weeks, but man, Colorado's interim head coach, Mike Sanford, he's a big he's a salesman, that's for sure. He he got the boys dialed in and riled up for the weekend, and all the fans can enjoy.
It was an overtime win, to be fair, right? It had that, I guess. California was favored by 15.
It was an overtime win?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was 13.
What was the final score?
20-13. Yeah, it was definitely a tough game to sit there and endure, but I certainly don't think it's worth storming the field.
No.
Just it's kind of sad.
What? This was their Alabama. Tennessee took down the goalpost to beat Alabama. Colorado beating anybody who's technically classified as any sort of D1. That's their Alabama. Give it to them, Tyler. Come on.
I can't do it. I can't do it in good conscience, knowing that was the score of the game.
It was 3-0 at halftime. They were defending a lead going into the second half.
Might have been the first lead they had all year.
It seems like it. That's incredible.
Go Buffs.
Go Colorado, man. Okay. I bring to the table one of the craziest stories that I've seen this week, maybe this year.
Insane.
There is a New York congressional candidate, Mike Itkis is his name, and he announced his candidacy in a very open way. So one of his platforms that he's running on is sexual positivity. Mike Itkis is a Manhattan in the Manhattan congressional district, and to announce his candidacy, he made and posted a porno in which he is all out there with the actress Nicole Sage or Nikki Sage. It is real. It is on the hub, and it is the most insane thing that I can think of a politician to do to announce their candidacy.
I can't believe I didn't hear about this at all. I was like, you had mentioned like, oh yeah, I'm gonna talk. Okay, candidate comes out in a strange way, and I'm like, all right, maybe he's like in costume or something. Like, I really didn't want to look up the story.
Everything but a costume.
You could have given me 1,000 guesses. Although, to be fair, that is actually a really smart strategic play from like, if that's one of your key stances, like that has been a big push over the last, I don't know, decade, maybe 2 decades, is like in line with sex positivity is like also the no longer looking down on people in like adult films and things like that. So kind of smart play on his end, but and also politics is boring, so like spice it up, I guess.
Yeah, well, and like you're always looking for your message to stick with people. This will be burned into the heads of many who choose to check out Mike Itkis's video.
Well, and it's how do you reach people that you can't otherwise reach, right? Like there's got to be a pretty large group in the United States, a pretty large population of people who don't care an ounce about local politics, but watch porn. And so maybe, I don't know if he can somehow do like targeted Facebook ads or something, whatever needs to happen, but he's trying to hit a different audience is all.
Now, I just checked to see if the video was on there. I did not partake in said video, but I would love if there was like supercuts, right? Like just edited in the middle of like political ads.
Oh, see, that's so smart. That's so smart.
It's like
it's like Mike Itkis is for our kids, and it's like him like reading to kids in school.
I think that could be a little. That could be a little taste. Maybe keep the kids out of it.
No, I was gonna say it's like the Better Call Saul commercials, like on the TV, where it's just like Mike Itkis for congressional candidate. And it's just him with the thumbs up, and then it cuts back to him in the action,
plowing,
just working.
Oh my God, and these people make laws. These people make laws for us.
No. You've got it wrong. You don't want the same people that we've been picking, because the people we've been picking are the people that everyone doesn't like. I say, if we're flipping it on its head, let's flip it on its head all the way. This isn't a left turn. This is like I was going to say a double 180, but that would just be the same thing. It's like just a 180, a triple 180. How about that?
Okay.
We're spinning again, and then we're spinning back again. And this
like
is where
the
we are now.
slide. Reverse.
Yeah. I did a 540.
Reverse.
Put this in the X Games.
Tony Hawk. Okay. I don't think Mike Itkis is doing a 560 in his video, but let's move on to Blank You Very Much. This is a segment of the show where we give ourselves really a prompt, and we fill in the blank, and we start with what I think to be pretty spicy news. Bill Belichick skipped Robert Kraft's wedding, which happened on Friday of this past week. He was not in attendance. So I ask, what is more football guy than Belichick skipping his boss's wedding?
I got to go second or third. I have to still think of it. I thought about this. I couldn't think of one. So somebody else has got to take the lead here.
I've got one. And okay. I think this one is near and dear to Tyler's heart, because his former head coach, Jeff Brom, had one of the best football guy moments of all time when he was playing, I think in the CFL. He got his clock. XFL. Well, he got his clock cleaned and just got blasted. I think his helmet was turned around on his head. And I think, what's the quote, Tyler? Am I still alive and do I have a heartbeat? Is there a football game to play?
He goes, do I have a pulse? Yes. Is this not the XFL? Yes, it is. Let's play football.
That is a football guy right there, right? I still feel like that is more football guy than skipping a wedding. That's my answer.
I mean, yeah, that's
a good answer. That's a good answer.
That's a great one. Football guy.
All right, mine's not nearly as strong, and it's kind of what I thought of earlier. I think I don't know that it actually happens in practice, but I'm gonna say running through a literal brick wall. If I ever saw a football player literally run through a brick wall, because that's like he's got that run through a brick wall mentality. Like you talk about that all the time. I think if somebody were to ever question a football guy's football guyness, and they just like did that, like tap themselves on the helmet and like charge up and just run headfirst into a brick wall, that's like maybe one of the few things that's more football guy than Belichick not going to Kraft's wedding.
Well, it's like one of those old fantasy football commercials, right? Where it's like, here's why you should pick me. And they would like punch through a wall and catch a football.
Catch the football.
Yeah.
I'm next.
All right, Tyler, you're up. What's more football guy than skipping your boss's wedding?
It would definitely be. I think it's just missing your own wedding. Like I feel like there's no way to top this, but to just I can't do it this week. I can't make it.
Game, right. Yeah.
We're playing. No, I can't do
It's
it.
like just let me know when I need to go say I do. I'll be there. I promise. And then I gotta head out pretty quick.
Or like skipping a child, like your first child's birth would be a good one. A runner-up for me, and that's a great answer, but a runner-up for me was if you caught the highlight maybe on Twitter or wherever, the Tennessee offensive lineman who puked, like projectile vomited, and then gave the Alabama D lineman a nod, and then stepped up to the line and went to work. Like that is almost the like epitome of football guy right there.
That is, there has to be an element of like potential for self-injury. I feel like like, oh, you literally just threw up. No, it doesn't matter. Like you might not have a pulse. You're already here. Doesn't matter. Like that's the football guy thing, right? Is like health aside, what am I going to do to get back in the game?
All right, that's a good one. And then we'll move on to this one, which I think is a pretty fun topic. Blank is what Robbie Anderson said to Steve Wilkes to get kicked out of the game, kind of in the same spirit of the Jordan Poole, Draymond Green question that we asked last week. But if you're unaware, Steve Wilkes is the interim head coach for the Carolina Panthers after Matt Rule got fired. And Robbie Anderson had something to say to Steve Wilkes during the game on Sunday against the Rams. Robbie Anderson was removed from the sideline, and today, Monday, he was traded to Arizona. So I'm curious what you guys think he said to Steve Wilkes.
I think the Panthers have been pretty rough this year, and I think Robbie Anderson has also been outspoken about his lack of excitement when they originally were getting Baker Mayfield, and Sam Darnold, has had his ups and downs. So I think Robbie Anderson said to Steve Wilkes, "Coach, I just want to win." And Steve Wilkes knew that couldn't be done on the Carolina Panthers, but also knew that it was so bold to say to him that they sent him to Arizona, where they're horrible. They've struggled. They're losing to teams they shouldn't be losing to. They have one receiver suspended. Another receiver maybe is out for the season. Kyler Murray doesn't know what's going on except for that he can run the ball. And we skipped a segment.
And when double XP weekends are.
And when the Call of Duty's, when Call of Duty's popping off. But we did skip a little moment because I didn't need to get to it. But our Nathaniel Hackett Coach of the Week award, I want to give in this segment to Cliff Kingsbury, who is this cool college coach who is successful, and he's, reunited with his quarterback, and he's not good. He doesn't have any creativity in the play call. Arizona is horrendous in the first quarter when he controls the game script. And overall, they're not good at decision-making on fourth down. They consistently fail to get fourth downs. I think they're averaging over the last couple weeks negative yardage on fourth down attempts. So even though this was supposed to be a team that could be in the playoffs, they've been terrible. And I think Steve Wilkes, who did coach for one season in Arizona, he's acutely aware of that. And when Robbie Anderson said, "Coach, I want to win," he said, "I know a place where I can send you." And they shipped him off to Arizona.
Well, and right, like he could feasibly be on the two teams that fire their coach mid-season. Like, I feel like, like the meme of like the Reapers walking in the next door.
Yes.
Like, I feel like this is maybe Robbie Anderson's the Reaper, and like he's going into the Cliff Kingsbury door next. Like it's entirely possible that is what happens.
I take it a little different way. I think what Robbie Anderson said to Steve Wilkes was, "Coach, I ran this game on Madden last night. I can run this this whole game plan in my sleep." Just absolutely tried to alpha him out of his own play calling abilities on the field.
I so
He was
badly
like,
need
let
that
me
to be
play
true.
quarterback.
Yeah. Come on, coach. I got this one.
Sends him a link to like a stream recording of like, watch, like I ran it through here. This is our game film for the week.
He was trying to show it to him on the iPad, like, look, we end up winning this game 34-30.
He's doing it on one of those like free to download apps that is like just little cartoon football guys. And there's like 2 plays that you can run. Like, look, man, we win this game. I like that.
That's great. I think Robbie Anderson said to Steve Wilkes had to be something about his hair. Like, coach, I'm thinking about making it all one big like lump. I'm thinking about putting it all together and seeing how that looks under a helmet. Like, Robbie Anderson's hair is something that I just genuinely don't get. I get twists, I get dreads, I get all that stuff. I don't understand, like, I'm going to grow my hair out and just let it mat. Just randomly and all over the place going to mat. He's got some of the craziest hair. I think Cam Newton did it at one point where he had the similar hairstyle, but it had to be something like, I'm thinking about doing something new, or like I'm gonna diet or something. I don't have a great answer for this, but
he does. I remember and I always liked seeing in like the ESPN fantasy app or whichever fantasy thing I was on. If I click Robbie Anderson, he's got the fun haircut. I always thought that was a nice little moment of joy for me to be like, oh, that's kind of a goofy looking haircut, but
yeah.
it's cool, right? The
Sure.
funniest thing I remember was seeing, I think it was on Twitter, a comp to the old Nickelodeon logo. You know, the orange splat.
Oh, the splat.
Yeah. It's like if you were to like silhouette it, it's just up and around. So
Or like what was the doll from Rugrats?
oh
Cynthia.
yeah. Oh, that's a good call out too. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
No, that he did something though. He either wanted out and got out, or didn't want out and got forced out. But yeah, Robbie Anderson, welcome to the Cardinals.
Okay, and last one. With Dak coming back soon, what team will make a move to pick up Cooper Rush?
All right, I got this. Unfortunately, it's going to require some explanation because it's a bit of inside humor. But to fill in the blank, I'm going to say Ryan Sartori's Dynasty Fantasy Football.
Oh,
we're in a fantasy league together, a dynasty league, and over the last 3 weeks, 4 weeks, maybe all 5 weeks, I've had at least one moment each week where Ryan Sartori comes to me and complains that his quarterback situation is a mess. He's got Matthew Stafford, who's been underperforming, and he's got Zach Wilson, who has gone from hurt and maybe has potential to also underperforming and has no clear solution at quarterback. So I think the only team that could stand to benefit from the addition of Cooper Rush is the only team I know that has nothing going for them at quarterback, and that's Ryan Sartori's fantasy team.
do you know how excited I got at the prospect of maybe bringing back Taylor Heineke this afternoon?
Oh, the practice squad guys are looking for the come up.
Because Taylor Heineke was on my team last year and even got a couple starts. And I was like, oh my God, he knows the system. He could come back and play. It'll be great. And I have Jahan Dotson. So like, certainly things are going to be fine. I'll go get Heineke. No, I mean, possibly, right? Like a backup quarterback at this point is probably better than playing Stafford or Zach Wilson. And Zach Wilson, I still believe in. I still hope that he pans out. But is handing the ball off at an incredible pace lately.
I've never personally been in charge of a fantasy team where it's possible. If I were you right now, I would be looking at every week's schedule. When are the Titans going to get blown out next? Because it might be worth putting Malik Willis in my starting lineup for the like 10 snaps he gets at the end of the fourth quarter.
Okay. My answer to this question was nobody, right? Like, man,
I love that it goes from you didn't think it could be anybody, and I thought the only person would be you.
genuinely speaking about the situation itself, like Rush has been in Dallas for a long time. He's proved that he knows the system at least enough to
They've won games.
right to he's proved that he can enough that he can be the guy in Dallas if he needs to. If Dak gets injured again, Dak is oft injured at this point. And truthfully, I don't think he's good enough for somebody to be like, let's go get Cooper Rush. But he you know what? If he's a free agent soon, it's entirely possible that he ends up like Mike Glennon.
Jerry Jones also seems to like Cooper Rush, which is that's a big thing
I
about sticking around with the
wonder
Cowboys.
why.
That's another point on why maybe nobody will go get him. Is it's a good insurance type backup to have, but nobody.
I thought it was because white quarterback. I thought that was why Jerry Jones.
It could be.
highlighted.
I don't know. He seems pretty protective of Dak too. But yeah. All right, Tyler, give us like an actual team. Maybe not.
I said the Colts would be most likely to pick him up to add to the Infinity Stone gauntlet that they have of failed quarterbacks. I think if you look back the past couple of years, they have Nick Foles, Matt Ryan, Carson Wentz, Phillip Rivers, Brian Hoyer, Jacoby Brissett.
Why'd you say that with so much chutzpah? Brian Hoyer.
It's the Canadian in me, I guess. But I think the Matt Ryan situation is not going to work out, and I don't think it's necessarily his fault. But I think to try to put a Band-Aid on their situation again, which they've been trying to do the past couple of years with just getting a Carson Wentz or Matt Ryan or Nick Foles even, like I think they could see his success and be like, oh, well, we could just plug him in here and he'll be okay. But yeah, that's what I think the Colts. On a serious note, I know you guys
send him to the Commandos
stuff. The Commanders?
Commandos.
But Carson Wentz, the Commanders are led by Carson Wentz.
He's going to the IR.
Yeah, he's out 4 to 6 weeks.
The finger, right?
That's why.
Yeah.
He's coming back.
He's got a bad fingy.
Or maybe we'll get another rookie. Maybe Sam Howell, I think, is going to be their new backup.
The future?
Jeez.
I'm pissed at you, Jack. All right, let's wrap up the show. We're running a little bit long. Let's hang a banner, and I will start just to get out of the way. Harrison Butker gets my banner this week. Drilled a 62-yard field goal in one of the biggest games of the year after spending the entire start of the season on injured reserve. The guy comes through, nails a gigantic kick, and not only does that, but like pulls off the Stephen Curry like turn around and give the three. Like it was, if we're talking about bringing swag to the kicker position, Harrison Butker just started a movement.
And maybe siphoned energy away from Justin Tucker, who's like number one and missed a field goal. So maybe that spirit of like, I'm the new guy. Like maybe Justin Tucker's on the way down.
Justin Tucker, a lot of people forget he's a system kicker.
That's a good call. Let's see. I think I have a Justin Tucker is on the Ravens, missed a field goal to the Giants, who won the game to go 5-1. Who are the recipient of my banner, Brian Daboll, who actually has turned out to be a very good head coach, and the Giants are doing very well when they weren't supposed to be, and they also have a ton of injuries and a very influx offensive scheme, and he seems like a guy that everybody on the team likes. He's high energy, he makes pretty good decisions, haven't seen him make too many blunders to this point, and I don't feel like it's that often where the big ticket free agent coach that everybody wants on their team actually ends up being really good and right away. I feel like we've had more guys sort of mysteriously rise up like, oh, they're actually pretty good. Who would have known? But no, Daboll, I think, has done everything that a fan could hope for. And so I'm hanging my banner for him this week.
One of the things that I've noticed about Brian Daboll, etc., is that I haven't been able to say much about him. I haven't been able to say he's doing this wrong or that right or whatever. And I think that's a good thing. He hasn't gotten his own way. He hasn't impeded his team at all. His ego is not the thing at the center of it all. It is simply that he is coaching a team. They are performing well, and that's okay. He doesn't have to be flashy. He doesn't have to be a guru or anything like that. He's just Brian Daboll. I think that's why the Giants are successful right now. Tyler, hang that banner, kid.
My banner this week goes out to Brian Ellis. He is a offensive coordinator for Georgia Southern. He told me a couple years ago that I wasn't good enough to play at Western Kentucky.
Oh, is this the asshole?
Yeah. He told me I wasn't good enough that wasn't talented enough to play at Western Kentucky. I went on to play at Purdue, started every game. He also was quoted in an article that I wasn't going to play professional football ever. So, and I started my first game this week. So I want to hang a banner to him, tell him, just kind of big fuck you to him. I really,
Wow.
this has been something that has eaten away at me every day since I saw it, since I heard him say those words. And now I can kind of tell him to go shove it up his own ass.
This is going to be the preview for the episode this week.
Please don't.
This isn't like a hang your banner. This is like your trophy wall now that you've got this is another guy, like a doubter, a hater that proved me wrong. Like, oh man.
You know what's more football guy than skipping your boss's wedding? This monologue that Tyler just had.
Thanking the guy who didn't believe in you is such a football guy move.
They wrote you off, but you didn't write back. Come on.
First of all, shout out all the haters who didn't think I could get here. Jeez, man.
I'd like
That's
to thank,
so strong.
I'd like to thank not only God, but also Jesus.
Yeah.
Right? Like, man. Hell yeah. What's his name?
Brian Ellis.
Fuck you, Brian Ellis. Unless you have a job for me, I'd
Well, also, kind of shout out Brian Ellis. They did upset James Madison this weekend. So, yeah, it's good to know that he has moved on as well. He's doing all right, but not quite as all right as you are, right? You're in the pros now.
Yeah, he's still in Group of 5, and my buddy Tyler has been to Power 5 and now to the pros. So that guy can kick rocks and die. Well, not die. That's a little excessive.
Maybe just the cross part.
Yeah, or punch a cactus.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Pound sand, buddy. Anyway, let's wrap up this episode. Because it's that time. We should wrap up this episode. It's been a long one. That's okay, because we had fun, and I think that we, as always, had some genuinely good conversations today, boys. As always, follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Hangin Banners. You can follow the podcast on YouTube, on Spotify, and also on Apple Podcasts. That's where you can listen and watch if you're a watcher. If you like to, sit back, relax, and watch. Maybe like that It Kiss fella, you can watch us too. All right, we're out of here. See you guys.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot for that look into sports, Brian. Yeah. And when we come back, we'll have one final look at weather. Stay tuned.